All right, now, everybody. Quiet, listen to me. We're going to start a show. Now, some of you people have been with me before. You know it's going to be a tough grind, but we're going to have a show.
And good morning. I am tweeting that we're on the air. I'm alerting all of our stations that we have started a couple of minutes late. No. I blame you, Albert.
Whoever is producing this thing has no idea what they're doing.
Yeah. But
what?
I am also in I'm in a grateful place. I love having Albert on board, and so I'm torn. I'm, as so many of us are on so many things.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, and Kim is here. Kim, you did a great job yesterday navigating the ship of state without me. I'll give you a little inside our show. So we thought it'd be fun, because we knew that Kim would be doing the show without me, to do these like recorded, like Kim and I would do some stuff recorded to intro the show, and then we'd record it for the outro of the show. And we just thought, it was kind of funny, and also, you know, it's a way to just start the show with the same energy or whatever. So we do it, right? And they were really good. And then I noticed that Kim didn't run them yesterday. So I asked, why did you not run the stuff that we did, you know, the open record? And she went, oh my God, I forgot all about it.
Well, there's this adrenaline that happens when you're not here and I'm in the hot seat, and all of a sudden my brain goes out the window and it's like fight or flight.
My bad. I'm sorry.
I was actually hoping that having done that and having those things sort of preloaded, that it would take some of that adrenaline and heat and, you know, pressure off of you. So I was really, that was the idea.
You know, they do this to me all the time. I don't know what the hell they do it for.
So we also recorded, as I recall, some takes on a couple of stories, the nun story, for example. So I hope you run it soon. Because I think there's an expiration date on that stuff. We've got a lot to get to today. It's a great show. First of all, it looks as though they made a debt deal to raise the debt ceiling. You understand essentially the concessions don't make the slightest change in deficits and debt. This is all politics. John Rothmann will weigh in on this, bottom of the hour. But I'm just astounded at how dysfunctional our country is. And the dug-in political parties have just kept us more dysfunctional than ever before. But of course, the one thing we can all agree on, right, is you can't spend enough on the military. The military. They get all the money. They come in with a request, and they get the request plus 20%. No one wants to seem weak on defending our freedom by sending billions of dollars through the years to defense contractors on complex weapon systems that never see the light of day or that don't work. But that is the one part of the budget that everybody agrees on. Anyway, when it comes to raising the debt ceiling, it looks as though they'll make that deal. You'll keep us posted on that, Kim?
Yes.
I used to have all the, you know, I was doing KGO, all the television monitors on, and I, you know, could tell you what the market's doing, the NASDAQ at any second. Could tell you what Congress is doing. I got C-SPAN. I got a separate tie-in there.
It's kind of how it looks in the Mark Thompson News Network over here. Got monitors.
Yeah, I've turned it all off. You know, now I want to be focused on our show, and you are watching that stuff. So as that vote goes down, you'll let me know. Anyway, I'm going to put it off to the side for a moment or two. I also want to mention to you that I think as significant a warning as you can get, we are getting from the AI tech community about the dangers of artificial intelligence.
And they made it.
Right. Yeah. the very people that made it, exactly, they are now warning of the, well, they're calling it an extinction event if this AI goes without any kind of check, regulation, or other way to rework it. I don't even think they have in mind the kind of regulation and reworking that they've generally referred to. But leave aside what I think, we have a leading expert in artificial intelligence. This guy's an international expert in AI and machine learning, and he comes in at 11 o'clock. So we'll do that just after Kim's News at 11. And then at 11:35, the Succession finale. I saw it, and I loved it. And I thought it was great. And I thought it was close to perfect in a way. So I mentioned this the other day to Mo Kelly, who's a radio, very smart dude, does a radio show in Southern California on KFI Radio. He said, I thought it missed, and HBO doesn't know how to do finale. Well, HBO doesn't do the show. HBO is, the network. A bunch of different companies do. He says The Sopranos was a bad ending, and the Great Game of Thrones was ending, and Succession was a bad ending. Okay. I said, well, great. Why don't you come on our show, and we'll talk about it. And then I was talking to Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies and CBS Sunday Morning. And he said, I thought The Sopranos ending was perfect. It just was so good. And he had I said, would you come on our show?
You mean the Succession ending?
Succession, Sopranos,
yeah.
yes.
Mm-hmm.
Succession, thank you. Mm-hmm. Succession ending was perfect. I said, will you come on our show? And so he's coming too. So it'll be Mo Kelly, Ben Mankiewicz. That'll be at 11:35. And I thought it was terrific. So, and based on everything I'm seeing, a lot of people agreed. So there's that. So that AI, Rothmann on the debt deal, there is much to do as we continue. Smash the like button. Do it early. Also, I would mention...
Smash it with your iron rod.
The debt deal is just part of what we're talking about with John Rothmann. I believe Chris Christie is entering the presidential race, and the GOP field is getting crowded, as was expected. So we'll touch on that. The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel ending. I've heard. I haven't gotten there yet, but I will take a look. Kevin Pollak is friend of the show, so he's in Maisel. But I will look. I did receive something, but now with the news from Kim about the... Now, am I going to get that picture, the John Daly picture?
I sent it to you. Do you not have it?
Oh, you did? Oh, the rod of equity?
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Let me see. Is it showable on the air too, or not?
I think so, yeah.
Well, hang on a second.
Let me see if I can't get it in there.
Because the rod of equity and mercy on this show. Oh, there it is. Yes. Yeah, if you could show it, that'd be great.
So he's this is his last day in London.
Mm-hmm.
And the royal jewels have been returned to wherever it is they live. And he thought, well, I'll go see the royal jewels. Right?
Right.
What?
So it costs $40 to get in to see the royal jewels.
Wow.
And then what happens is you get onto this people mover thing that zips you past the displays. And they tell you, don't take any photos. But he's thinking, I'm getting a photo of the rod of equity and mercy.
Absolutely.
Oh, my God.
Yeah.
So he takes this picture of the rod of equity and mercy and that little ball thing. And he gets yelled at. The people are like, hey, no flash photography.
No.
Yeah. Wow.
And I said, did you get your phone confiscated? He goes, no, because I'm on the people mover. So I just zipped away, exit stage left.
I love it.
We have processes and protocols and standards.
I love it.
He said he went around on the people mover 3 times trying to get this picture.
I'm a fan. I love it. There they are.
Look at that.
The magical accoutrements associated with the new king.
Receive the rod of equity and mercy.
Now, if you are a
$40 picture right there.
If you're a Patreon or PayPal member, you've already received the rod of equity and mercy. So I don't want you to worry. You have it. And with it, let me just say there's a quality of peace, a quality of confidence. Albert, without any further delay, I'd like you to put one story in here if you could, and that's the story of, I don't think I put it in, and that's the story of the Manson family member who's just been granted parole. We say Manson family member. She's not literally related to Charles Manson, but you understand. If you could put it in there. But before you do that, if you would, please, sir, are you ready with some law and disorder? Let's do it. This is Law and Disorder.
In the criminal justice system, the people,
pimps, addicts, thieves, bums, winos, girls who can't keep an address, and men who don't care,
are represented by two separate yet equally important groups.
A cop, a flatfoot, a bull, a dick, John Law, you're the fuzz, the heat, you're poison, you're trouble, you're bad news.
These are their stories.
Oh, I did put it in here, and here it is. Parole is reinstated for the former Charles Manson follower, Leslie Van Houten.
Oh, Leslie.
It's a split ruling. It happened yesterday. A state appeals court panel reinstated a grant of parole for former Charles Manson follower Leslie Van Houten. That overturns an earlier decision by Governor Gavin Newsom to block her release. The reality is, if she weren't part of the Manson case, she would have been out on parole a while ago. Not to say she should have been. I don't know. That's what she looked like back in, 50 years ago. More than 50 years ago, that picture was taken. And now she's 73. There she is. And she's serving a potential life sentence for taking part in the killings of Leno and Rosemary LaBianca. The murder is gruesome, brutal. It was a 2-1 ruling by the parole panel. And the Associate Justice Helen Bendix wrote, Van Houten has shown extraordinary rehabilitative efforts, insight, remorse, realistic parole plans, support from family and friends, favorable institutional reports, and at the time of the governor's decision, had received 4 successive grants of parole. So she kept getting approved for parole, and it kept being derailed.
Just because of who she was hooked up with.
Yeah, that's what I'm kind of saying, that it was so high profile. Under these circumstances, Van Houten's unchanging historical risk factors do not provide evidence that she is currently dangerous and unsuitable for parole.
But she did actually take part in the murders of that couple. I mean, she physically did assist with the killing, right?
There was Tex Watson and that Patricia Krenwinkel. That was in, they killed LaBianca, both of them, Mr. and Mrs. LaBianca. He was a grocery grocer, I think.
Yeah.
They were both stabbed multiple times. Let me see. I don't see.
I think she had a hand in that.
Oh, she's literally had a hand in the killing. Okay.
She's serving concurrent sentences of 7 years to life after being convicted in 71 for her role in the killings of LaBianca and his wife. Yeah.
I mean, I know she's serving time for her role in the killings. My question is sort of what your question is. Was she actually involved in the killings, or was she there at the time of the killings? Was she driving the car to get away from the time? These are all things that would still give you a murder conviction if they convict everybody involved in this case. I don't know, was she one of the people stabbing Mrs. LaBianca? Albert, it would seem to me that you should
Google it.
I mean, I'm just asking you to find the facts on that. I feel like Rothmann would know that. Rothmann, do you know that or not?
He doesn't know, I don't think.
He's not.
I believe she did. I think she had blood on her hands. I think she was a stabber. That's what I remember reading.
So over 50 years later, she will now be released. That's the latest there.
Yeah, Van Houten was 19 when she and other followers fatally stabbed the LaBiancas in their home and then smeared blood on the walls.
Camp Pendleton officer active duty, still on active duty, pleaded guilty to a misdemeanor count of parading in the U.S. Capitol. That's the latest on the kids who stormed the Capitol and tried to overthrow the government. Yeah, he's the latest. But in that spirit, I thought I would share with you the latest on your favorite rioter, and that's the QAnon Shaman, as he was called.
The horn guy.
The horn guy.
Yeah.
The QAnon Shaman is out of prison. And
how did that happen?
Exactly. How did that happen?
What?
I'll tell you how.
I thought he was eating organic food in jail, no?
He was originally sentenced to 41 months in prison back in November of 2021. The guy, is the paint. You got a picture of him, Albert, or you want to put something up of him? Do we have or Kim? Yeah. That's him now. Okay, that's his new look. All right, he's in a kind of pitch mode now. We'll play a little bit of what he's pitching. But at the time of you see it on the front of our show. You saw it there. Most people recall. But the QAnon Shaman, Jacob Chansley is his real name. He is out early. He went to a halfway house. They released him early, and they sent him to a halfway house. And now that he's out, there he is. Thank you. He is totally changing his tune, like so many who are so contrite, so apologetic. Oh my gosh, I've realized I was sucked into the darkness of Donald Trump and the Stop the Steal people. I'm so sorry. I can't believe I did it. Judge makes a ruling. Judge releases them on whatever. And then what do? They go out and then they show up at a Michael Flynn rally and say, I'm a political prisoner. So the QAnon Shaman is taking it a step further. He is selling merchandise. Flags, hats, T-shirts, mugs, water bottles, aprons, other apparel. He also offers one-on-one consultations and sessions with him. This is all off of his website. He has lists of consultations for $500. I have a little bit of the QAnon Shaman and his pitch and kind of his rap right now. Albert, I don't know what part you got. I think I sent you some time code, but here's a little bit of the QAnon Shaman.
Hello, United States of America and the world. My name is Jacob Angeli Chansley, and I would like to start this official statement by thanking God Almighty for protection and blessings along this arduous
stop right
journey.
now. This feels like a Shark Tank pitch. Have anybody watched Shark Tank?
I love that.
Hello, sharks. My name is a QAnon Shaman, and I'm here to offer 10% of my company for $100,000. And anyway, sorry, Albert, go ahead, please.
I once heard that school teaches us lessons and gives us a test, but God gives us a test and teaches us lessons. And to say the least, I have most certainly learned numerous lessons during the test which God has graced me with over the last 2.5 years. Now, one of the most important lessons I learned was patience. See, the world is currently going through turmoil, the likes of which many of us were not prepared for by our schools, by our governments, and our cultural upbringing. However, patience is key if we are to overcome the obstacles before us. And
well, he certainly showed patience the day that he stormed the Capitol, right? He wasn't going to wait. He wanted in right away.
Now, if handled with patience and understanding, we can use these demoralizing and destabilizing crises to emerge a more evolved and stable and moral nation and species.
This is a word from the Lord, and he's not happy.
I've learned along the way.
Oh, wait a minute.
The power of peace and how having an unshakable internal peace is by far the most powerful tool that we have at our immediate disposal.
I love it. Thank you, QAnon Shaman. Wow. So if you look at it, I saw that as a Shark Tank pitch. It was so Shark Tankish,
Well, and then you can buy the Shaman Life hydration system.
Yeah. He's got his own hydration system.
He's got a lot on that website. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that website is like a superstore for QAnon Shaman. But it's an amazing thing that you could perpetrate the sort of overthrow attempt of our government, be part of this riot, go through the Capitol with the kind of wanton, riotous, violent, frankly, mission, and then be out on the street and be, reconstituting yourself as some kind of hero with a website and merch and stuff just a short time later. It's outrageous,
You know what he's got that you don't have is a baby onesie, a Shaman Life baby onesie. And
that's
I really
on the site?
I really feel like, we're remiss on the Mark Thompson merch site not to have the onesie for the little ones.
This is a
why
good point.
Why wouldn't you want this?
Yeah. Can you get in closer there, Albert? What's on the actual logo? Is it? He's got a flag there. It looks like
it's a little cupcake with horns, and it says, "Didn't do muffin. Didn't do muffin." Can you see that?
Oh yeah.
With a bowl with there's a baby head. Sorry.
We should get some baby. We should get some baby stuff up there on the website. The reason we haven't, generally, we wanted stuff that our audience could wear, but I suppose there's a whole new generation. So, anyway, QAnon Shaman continues to work his magic, and it's the politics of grievance that meets the politics of Christianity and patience and spirit, and mix it all together, and you've got some kind of message that maybe you can sling, and that's what he's slinging now. Hey, you know what? He may very well become a super rich guy. I mean, truly, we need to pitch for money on this show to stay on the air, and his pitches, I suspect, hit an even bigger audience, and they feel some sort of identification with his victimized world, right? Everybody feels they're a victim. This is the new politics of America. You play your victim and grievance thing, and then you get support. And so it might work out for him.
He's even got socks on there. I'm telling you.
Yeah, we looked at socks. You like socks as a, I don't know.
I have my Mark Thompson socks. I would wear them.
All right. Well, maybe we should look at those. Mark's merch people. We should maybe get into that. I also want to just quickly mention as we finish up, look, oh my God.
Look at all the stuff. There's the socks flying by.
Who is doing his merch site?
Somebody's
they're an aggressive crew, and got to give them some credit.
A flag that says freedom with his picture on it. The American flag coffee mug. He's got a moon logo. It's all very spiritual. And I think he's going to make a lot of money.
All very spiritual. Well, I wish him well, I guess. Last thing I want to mention is that Tennessee woman who disappeared on that cross-country trip. They thought that she might eerily have suffered the same fate as, was it Gabby Petito? Is that the woman's name who was also involved? Nikki Alcaraz and her boyfriend, Tyler Stratton, they were found in Eureka. She was spotted at a Walmart in Redding, and that's what led authorities to believe that maybe they were in Northern California. They then arrested him. She has bruises all over her body. Clearly, they've got a horribly violent relationship. She left her home in Tennessee earlier this month for a road trip, left in a black Jeep with Stratton and a dog. They plan to travel to Orange County in Southern California to visit her family, but 3 weeks ago, the 33-year-old disappeared in New Mexico. And the family said she was very much in danger as long as she was around him. And now the two have been both spotted, and he is under arrest. That is law and disorder. for today.
Tune in again next time for more Law and Disorder on The Mark Thompson Show.
All right, that's it. Let's roll. Hey, let's be careful out there.
One significant PS to Law and Disorder is the Purdue Pharma settlement. They're going to settle thousands of lawsuits, and they are going to do it in such a way that they will be completely indemnified from any other damages that they have to pay. The U.S. Court of Appeals for the Second Circuit greenlit a plan in which the Sackler family will pay up to $6 billion in settlement money to help ease the opioid crisis while relinquishing control of the company. But the deal is that they will not be exposed to any further suits, and they'll have essentially civil suit protection under this deal. They paid out a lot, but the damage has been substantial. And the Sackler family and the company has tried to protect itself in various ways. But, and this hasn't been easy. Purdue Pharma filed for bankruptcy in 2019. Members of the Sackler family didn't file for bankruptcy. The Sacklers were called upon personally to contribute to this fund. I mean, they all have billions, right, as a result of this. But the three-judge panel ruled that the Sacklers could be shielded despite not having declared bankruptcy. The court ruled the Sacklers needed to be shielded from future lawsuits to, quote, ensure the fair distribution of the settlement money. They agreed to pay up to $6 billion over 18 years to victims, survivors, and governments, including states that had objected to this deal. The Sackler family members had long insisted on shields from civil lawsuits in exchange for making payments toward this settlement. So that was pretty significant as well. I wanted to just touch on that. When we come back, he is the sage. John Rothmann weighs in on the debt deal. What does it really do concerning the debt and the politics of America in the 2023 year? We'll also touch on Chris Christie entering the presidential race and, spend a moment or two on the politics of the top of ticket races. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Smash it with your iron rod.
Give us a thumbs up. Kim's news and then the magic of Rothmann next.
Hey, which one do you use, Mark Thompson?
Use Mark Thompson.
The Mark Thompson Show.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Let's begin with, the debt ceiling. The House is set to vote on a debt ceiling bill this evening. Speaker Kevin McCarthy working to secure the votes for the deal he struck with the White House, as a number of conservative members have openly opposed legislation, arguing it doesn't go far enough to rein in government spending. The bill needs a simple majority to clear the House. Less than 20% of Americans are satisfied with the state of the nation. That, according to a new Gallup poll. The poll found about a third of Democrats are satisfied or happy face with the trajectory of the country. Just 1 in 25 Republicans are happy with how things are going. So that's not very good when you look at how those polls sometimes could be indicative of how the president is doing. There's a situation with a Chinese jet, and it's garnering a lot of attention, you could say. The Pentagon now releasing a video of a Chinese jet flying directly past the nose of an American plane. It called the move an unnecessarily aggressive maneuver, while the U.S. plane was conducting safe and routine operations. But China's foreign ministry spokesperson says that U.S. naval and aerial surveillance in the South China Sea region showed that encounter that happened endangers China's national security. Looks like they may have done it on purpose. I have reports that a power plant explosion is being reported in the Texas area today. This story, apparently, according to KBTX, a boiler exploded this morning at the Oak Grove Power Plant in Franklin. That's about a couple hours away from Houston. Authorities haven't confirmed any injuries, but a medical helicopter is already at the scene there with this power plant explosion. The United States Navy has rescued one of its pilots who was had to eject from a plane Wednesday morning. That pilot, part of a fighter squadron with the Naval Air Station Key West in Florida. Commander Matt Pierce confirming the Naval Air Station search and rescue chopper rescued the pilot from the water off Key West. And lastly, actor Al Pacino is becoming a dad again at the age of 83. There are multiple reports that Al Pacino's 29-year-old girlfriend, Noor Alfallah, is 8 months pregnant with the New York native's fourth baby.
What?
Coming just weeks after Pacino's acting buddy and fellow Oscar winner Robert De Niro welcomed his seventh child.
All the cool kids are doing
79.
Yeah.
But Al Pacino is 83, so I think he just wanted to beat De Niro. You know?
I wonder if Rothmann has an announcement. Maybe he has a kid on the way.
It's a possibility. Yeah. I mean, he's a virile man. You never know what could happen over there.
Wow.
Well, I don't know. How do I know? I don't know.
Wild idea, but it just might work.
I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
Yeah. Oh, my God.
I've told you, it's never easy being in this business.
The Mark Thompson Show.
What up, everybody? It is our Wednesday show. Wednesdays bring him in. He is the sexy beast who brings political analysis whenever he comes. How about it for John Rothmann?
I want to clarify what Kim just said. I have two sons, as you may know, and I always wanted a daughter. And my darling wife, we celebrated our 36th wedding anniversary yesterday.
Oh, happy anniversary.
Wife told me
that is very cool, pal.
He said, I can have a daughter with my next wife.
Well, you know, it's worth noting that what was the age? Just how old is Pacino's baby mama? He's 79.
He's De Niro is 89.
Yeah.
No.
No.
Pacino is 29. Let me do it again. Pacino is 83, and his girlfriend is 29.
Okay. 83 to 29.
Yeah.
What do they talk about?
They didn't talk. They acted.
Yeah. That really is, wow. That's the power of celebrity, isn't it, John Rothmann? That's just the aura.
You know, there's only one celebrity on this broadcast, Mark, and I'd have to defer to you on that one.
I love that. Man, I'm telling you, there's not a huge pool of 29-year-olds looking for 83-year-olds. That's all I'm saying. Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
But speaking of
famous or rich, maybe.
Speaking of old white guys, let's talk about Congress for a second. The deadlock over the debt is something that I think has many layers. It looks as though there was a deal made, right? I mean, it was made over the weekend between Biden and McCarthy representing his coalition there. But the coalition isn't so coalesced, as it turns out. The hard right wasn't going to be happy with any kind of deal that had Biden's fingerprints on it at all, right? Take me through this whole thing.
Well, fundamentally, what you have is a deep division. The far right, as you just alluded to, will oppose this because it doesn't give them what they want. The far left is not happy because they didn't get what they wanted. But the real lesson here is that in the old days, if the President of the United States and the Speaker of the House of Representatives and the leaders of the opposition all agreed that the legislation is pretty much set. But there is a new provision which McCarthy insisted on in order to become Speaker, and that is that one member can challenge the Speaker and call for a new election. You may know that a congressman from Utah, a Republican, has announced he is resigning, I believe, by the end of this week. There have been conflicting stories, which means that McCarthy's margin, it will now be down to 3 votes. That's really very tight. So you have these traditional positions. Now, let me tell you what the overshadowing issue is. What happens if nothing happens? And then we have a real, in the view of many, national catastrophe. And that would affect people who receive Social Security, military pay, the whole 9 yards. So the Congress is really under the gun. If Republicans or Democrats on the extreme defeat this measure, does it mean the country is finished? The answer is, of course, no. No, not at all. But it means that our credit rating internationally will be downgraded. And if that happens, it will impact our economy, particularly the stock market. And remember that many Americans, I think the number now is about 60% of Americans have some investment in the stock market. And for those of us who have retirement income, I know in our situation with the SAG-AFTRA, they have money in the market. I know they do. It could have a huge impact. So all of these factors weigh in. The important thing is that for Joe Biden, it is a test of his leadership, of his party. But more important is for Kevin McCarthy, it's a real test of whether he can hold the Republicans in line. And given his very narrow majority, it's critical for him.
The Congressional Budget Office estimates the deal will reduce deficits by $1.5 trillion over a decade, which sounds like a lot, but it's really just the federal debt, now 97% of GDP, gross domestic product, of course, will rise to around 115% in a decade instead of 119%. In other words, you see how nothing's really changing. That's what I was getting at.
Mark, that does not take into account a national catastrophe. Let's assume there's another terrorist attack. Let's assume for a minute the very worst scenario, that the drones that hit Moscow the other day, which no one is talking about, which is absolutely critical, provokes another war, a vast war. It involves the Europeans. Let me tell you, anything can destabilize our economy. And in the event of a national crisis, we spend. We learned that on September the 11th. By the way, we also learned it when the economy nearly crashed in the closing days of the Bush presidency. So whatever compromises they reach, whatever they do, it's a problem. So I was sitting with a group of friends and they said, what would you do, John? And I said, very simply, I would impose the penny tax, which is a conservative concept, that 1 penny out of every dollar you spend is set aside to reduce the national debt. Now, to take years, the estimate is something like 20 years to actually do anything, but it would be a start, it would be a process, but people are very resistant to doing anything. So I'm going to give you the good news is that they'll reach a compromise. The bad news is that in our lifetimes, collectively, there will not be a real reduction in the debt, nor will we see a solution. May I just say one other thing, and I know you want to move on to the presidential race. The big question is the interest on the national debt. As the interest on the debt grows, it becomes a real problem, not so much for us, but for our children and, God willing, our grandchildren. So this is another.
So this affects Al Pacino's coming child, is what you were saying.
And that was my illusion, of course.
Yes, very well
glad
done.
That you
let me
given your relative age, Mark, and my relative age, we have a long time to catch up with Al Pacino.
We do. We got a little. Yes, go ahead. We got a little runway. Go ahead.
Can I bring this up because I was reading about this pipeline. I don't know if you guys saw this, but Senator Joe Manchin apparently, when dealing with this debt ceiling bill, helped secure this provision in a deal that would make federal agencies approve all the remaining permits for his Mountain Valley pipeline. It's a 300-mile natural gas pipeline. Also in the deal, the project would be shielded from any litigation. Environmental groups and Democratic lawmakers not happy about this, but this is now in that bill, this Mountain View pipeline.
Yeah, that's exactly correct, Kim.
In West Virginia and Virginia.
Yeah. You're 100% correct. Legislation, it's sort of like watching sausage being made. It's not particularly pretty. But I do want to point out that there are those who want Joe Manchin to run for president in 2024 on a national unity ticket. This, in my view, deep sixes any shot he would have at such a candidacy. But it is part of the price we pay. The Republicans have made concessions, the Democrats have made concessions, and the one who really won in all of this was Joe Manchin.
Well, it's an abomination, though. That specific project is an abomination. That pipeline has been held up for a reason. It goes through pristine areas along watersheds, across tribal lands. There are reasons that this has been held up.
It's appalling. And the question becomes, and I ask Mark, and I'll ask him the same question, and I should ask the same question of myself. If I were a member of Congress and I recognized that we have to do something about the debt ceiling, and this was a concession that had to be made in order to get the debt ceiling in place, would we vote for this bill? And I point this out because it's not cut and dried, so to speak. And you might say the Congress is going to have to put it in their pipe and smoke it, so to speak.
Well, I got it. The pipe. I hate for anything to be a drop dead, and this is kind of what you're implying, a drop dead element of whatever's crafted. But I have to say, this pipeline and a lot of the, Manchin, of course, takes more money from fossil fuel lobbyists and has more connections to the fossil fuel industry than any other member of Congress. Think about that.
He's from West Virginia. And remember, the primary industry in West Virginia was coal. And West Virginia hit tremendous poverty. When we talk about Appalachia, you're talking about West Virginia. And so there is no question that when you represent a state like that, what is the job of every representative or senator? It is to get reelected. And in order to do that, you have to serve your constituents. And so they are voting the interests of the people who elected them rather than the interests of the country. Now, let me clarify and tell you, it will go to the Senate. But the idea was representatives might make deals, the House, because it was the people's house, but the Senate was supposed to be free of such situations. Well, look now at Lindsey Graham on the question of defense spending. I mean, it is, in a sense, depressing. May I just give you one historical anecdote? And that is that when the question of building the atomic bomb came, the members of Congress, the Democrats led by Sam Rayburn, the Republicans led by Joe Martin, made a deal. And everybody trusted each other in Congress, and they were able to pass the whole budget for the atomic bomb secretly without putting it in the budget, because the members of Congress trusted each other and they understood what national security meant. We no longer have a Congress that functions like that. And may I tell you that if, God forbid, the debt ceiling is not raised, and if continued compromises need to be made, we are going to have a crisis as great as the question of the atomic bomb, because it will affect the whole world, because we are the backbone of the world's economy.
This just from the Wall Street Journal, and then we will move on to the presidential race. The U.S. isn't the only advanced country whose politics have become polarized, but it is the only one where the division of budgetary authority between the executive and legislative branches, an annual budget cycle, and a debt ceiling offer creates so many opportunities for polarized politics to jeopardize what should be the routine matter of funding the government. And that's why this is the key. This is the key line, John. That's why Moody's Investor Services rates the U.S. institutional strength lower than that of any other AAA rated country. It's what you're talking about. Exactly. That's the ripple effect.
Yeah, I can't emphasize this enough. If the economy tanks, it's a national catastrophe. There is another historical example. In 2008, when the Bush administration expired, the nation was on the brink of financial collapse. Republicans and Democrats had to agree to a plan to save the economy. And they did it because they understood the implications if they didn't. And that is exactly where we are today. So there will be a critical vote in the House of Representatives tonight, and there will be a great debate by the far right of the Republican Party as to whether to challenge Speaker McCarthy. And the Democrats, particularly the progressive wing of the Democratic Party, so-called progressive wing, will now have to deal with the fact that they're supporting Joe Biden because they don't have an alternative. And even if they had an alternative, it wouldn't succeed. I'm going to be looking at what Bernie Sanders does in the Senate. But it is Jayapal, the leader of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, who has now said she will vote against the deal. Now, it is interesting, Mark, when you consider that it means the far left and the far right may disagree or agree on many things, but the one thing they seem to agree on is that this is not a good bill. There won't be enough votes. It'll pass. It has to pass. The national consensus is that we have to raise the debt limit, and everyone is going to have to give a little bit. And we'll just see how the extremes respond. By the way, have you heard Donald Trump say a word yet? And the answer is no. But Ron DeSantis has, and DeSantis is poo-pooing this, not saying he's against it, but is poo-pooing it as another compromise and so forth that won't work. But I'm waiting for Donald Trump on this as well, and I have a feeling he's going to remain very quiet.
Well, he made the point that we should default, when he was too, and that's a typical sort of knee-jerk response.
Only when he was out of office. Right. When he was in office, that was one of the great lines of the CNN town hall.
Yeah, in which he was clear. He says, "I don't know why anyone would use the debt ceiling as a political tool, et cetera." So that's when he was in office.
Can you imagine hypocrisy in politics?
Well, he takes it to another level. But all right, now let's talk about Chris Christie. He is going to be another one who enters the presidential race. I mean, the only two candidates so far, the only two aspirants, if I can use the word, and that would be ding word, who are showing up in the polls really are DeSantis and Trump. They're the front runners. Give me the deal on Chris Christie.
Chris Christie is running because he can. He is going to concentrate on New Hampshire. He's not going to go into Iowa. He is going to do everything he can to win, or at least to deter Donald Trump from winning in New Hampshire. This is the important lesson in all of this. The Republican who wins in Iowa and New Hampshire is the Republican nominee for president by historical precedent. So for Donald Trump, he's putting all his chips on the Iowa caucuses and the New Hampshire primary. If he can win both of those, he believes, and the consensus politically is, that he would be unstoppable. Let me point out that the legal problems of Donald Trump continue to grow and multiply. I believe that sooner rather than later, there will be an indictment of Donald Trump on several different levels. Will that impact? Well, the answer is that it appears that his supporters don't give a tinker's damn, and they will vote for him no matter what. So if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president, I believe that he will lose the general election. It doesn't do much for the Republican Party, to be very honest with you. But for Democrats, there is a sigh of relief. And I don't know if you saw the breakdown on the analysis of the vote in Wisconsin on the Supreme Court justice, the Wisconsin Supreme Court justice. But it was fascinating because the abortion issue, the right of a woman to choose, has become so critical to a core number of voters, men and women, that the Republican Party is in deep trouble. Remember, DeSantis signed his bill with a 6-week cap in the middle of the night and doesn't talk about it. The next day he spoke at Jerry Falwell's college, Liberty University, and he didn't make a peep about what he had signed. So the Republicans are conscious of the fact that they have a problem, but their biggest problem, and Chris Christie hopes, as a former Trump ally, and remember he was an acolyte there and really defended Donald Trump down the line, that for Chris Christie, this is his shot at becoming the person who challenges Donald Trump with some credibility. One other quick note, and that is that Mike Pence is going to jump in as well. And you may note that CNN has already scheduled a town hall with Mike Pence, despite the fact that he is not yet an announced candidate.
That's wild. Yeah, that's wild. Well, Pence will not get the kind of curiosity, you get in Trump a kind of car wreck quality, and people tuning in, they want to see it. He's capable of saying anything, doing anything. Of course, they feel that.
Want to see his people don't want to see a car wreck. They want to see a victory. They want to see, the only word I can apply to it is restoration, and that is what they are after. So again, it's two conflicting views of the future of the Republican Party and the future of the United States.
I'll ding restoration. Yeah. I'll ding restoration, and I'll ding acolyte, please. Yeah.
Well, I seem to be making points today.
Yes, you are. You're gathering them, sir. But you're untouchable. I think you're the squad leader. Well, that's the deal then on the presidency and that side of the aisle. Give me a moment to at least check off on what's happening with the Democrats. How do you see the Democratic Party? You mentioned the hard left or the coalition that the Democrats have also has divisions along the lines of what the GOP has. Not quite as they're not the flamethrowers that the right has, but they are divided nonetheless.
Well, let me suggest, if you take a look at the polls, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is polling at about 20% among Democratic voters. You and I believe, have both interviewed Robert Kennedy Jr. He is really running as an anti-vax candidate. That was his whole basis. The fact that he's polling at 20%, I think, has to do with his name recognition. I always remember the story when I was campaigning for Nixon in 1968 in Wisconsin, and I met a little old lady who said, I'm voting for McCarthy. And I said, what? And she said, well, I voted for old Joe before, and he's back, and I'm going to vote for him again. Of course, Joe McCarthy has been dead for years, since 1957. But there is a confusion, and Robert Kennedy Jr. represents to something that he is not. I expect Joe Biden to win overwhelmingly unless, and let's be clear, unless something happens to Joe Biden, physically, whatever. The answer then is that
you expect him to win overwhelmingly. You just said
the nomination.
The nomination. Okay.
The nomination. And if he doesn't, Kamala Harris is next in line. And a lot of people say to me, well, she's a lightweight. She's not going anywhere. That's what they say about vice presidents. Kamala Harris has a huge base of support among minorities in the Democratic Party. And she will, if she becomes president of the United States, the last time a sitting president who had succeeded because he had been vice president was defeated for the nomination of his party was Chester Alan Arthur in 1884. If a vice president becomes president, they are virtually unassailable. And remember, Ronald Reagan tried to unseat Jerry Ford, who had been vice president and became president, and he was unsuccessful in that in 1976. So I do not discount Kamala Harris. I believe people should be looking very carefully at the Democratic Party and what they're doing. Oh, you're reaching for the Kamala Harris doll?
The Kamala Harris finger puppet is here, John, in support of your, and always. Thank you, John. I know you were one of the first people to interview me on KGO.
I was the first radio talk show that she ever appeared on. So
the first radio talk show. I can't wait to be reunited when Joe Biden buys the farm. I'll be in there.
It's an interesting speculation, but I'm glad you mentioned the Democrats because I know we got to wrap it up because you're going to have a fascinating
we really do have a great AI conversation coming up.
I just want to be clear. Part of these divisions in politics, we are going to get a real glimpse of in the process of the vote that will take place today and later this week on raising the debt limit. We must all pay attention to it very carefully. And next week, we will have a lot to talk about, I'm sure.
But so you think, John, you think there are tea leaves to read here regarding the way this vote goes down? That's your point?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
I think for the Republicans and the Democrats, because remember, in the Congress, there's something called a whip on both sides. And the idea was for the whip to whip the people into line. And we will see whether McCarthy can whip his people into line. And in turn, we have to see whether the Democratic leadership, Hakeem Jeffries, who is now the leader of the Democrats in the House of Representatives, whether he can hold his people. I am waiting and watching to see that because these political tea leaves mean a lot in terms of this battle. And then when it gets to the Senate, as Kim properly mentioned, the question of Joe Manchin's little addition there, how will members of the Senate react to that? Lindsey Graham is on the warpath about potential cuts in the military, and he has become their great champion, if you want to put it that way. So I'm watching the reaction all the way around on this situation.
Never have to worry about the military in America, huh? They're always going to get their money. Right, John? Pentagon always gets their budget.
Yep. There was once a chairman of the Armed Services Committee in the House by the name of Mendel Rivers. And Mendel Rivers knew that if he went in and asked for something, by God, he got it. And I can tell you that is the case today. No one is prepared even if you're paying $100,000 for a screwdriver, you know, these.
Which is what, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, nobody really questions that or checks into that. And I'm a great defender of the military, but if you believe there is no waste in the military, I have a bridge made out of gold I'd like to sell you right here in San Francisco.
No organization, no agency wastes money in Washington like the Pentagon. It's absolutely amazing. John, what's his name? Rivers? Melville Rivers?
Melville Rivers.
I'll ding you for that. That was very strong. John Rothmann, everyone. We'll talk next week, John.
All right.
Love you.
Thank you all.
Yeah, bye-bye.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Wow, Mendel Rivers gets a mention. That's you're not going to hear that on any other show. You could go across YouTube right now and look for Mendel Rivers references, and you're coming up empty. This is the only place you'll find that. Yeah. Albert, I suggest we go to Kim's News, and then we begin one of the most significant conversations when it comes to AI that I think people are going to have a chance to listen in on. That's with the international expert in artificial intelligence and machine learning, Chris Mattman is his name, and he will join us. Albert, are you good with that? Albert's a little under the
yeah, that sounds good to me.
Poor guy.
Oh, Albert.
Yeah, I know. He doesn't sound good. But anyway, smash the like button, if you would, for John Rothmann.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
Helps us in the YouTube universe.
I'll hit that like.
Yeah. Smash
Smashed
that like.
it with your iron rod.
When we come back, we'll talk artificial intelligence and the reality of an extinction event brought on by AI. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
The news sponsored by the lovely people at Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore, home of indeed the Mark Thompson Why Are You Yelling Red and the hey, which one of you is Mark Thompson Pinot Grigio?
Yes.
I did have to look at the bottle for that. Yes.
Fine choice for the warmer months. I like it in the afternoon, a little something.
That's right. Let's talk about what's happening in Oklahoma this morning, because the Oklahoma Supreme Court says 2 of the state's laws restricting abortion are unconstitutional. The court ruling Wednesday against the bills that prohibit doctors from performing abortions at any point in a pregnancy and allow doctors to be sued for performing abortions after a heartbeat is detected. The court said women have an inherent right to terminate their pregnancy if their lives are in danger. That was an update on a story we've been following this morning in Texas. 1 person is dead after this power plant explosion in Texas. Officials in Robertson County say a boiler exploded this morning at the Oak Grove power plant in Franklin, about 2 hours away from Houston. The victim was found with critical injuries and later died. This story is so odd. What do you make of it, Mark Thompson? This woman who accused Joe Biden of sexual assault is now defecting to Russia. Tara Reid told Russian state media she felt safe in their country and would seek citizenship in Russia. She made headlines in 2020 by accusing Biden on the campaign trail of sexually assaulting her in 1993. Now off she goes to Russia. Yeah, I'm so interested in why. Why would she do this? PG&E will not be facing any criminal charges of manslaughter and reckless arson for its role in the Zog fire. Remember the Zog fire, 2020? It tore through more than 56,000 acres in Shasta County. 4 people died. You can see the victims on the screen here. The California Public Utilities Commission opened an investigation against PG&E, alleging that the company did not remove a tree on time because of their poor record keeping. Well, the state utility agency admits one of their utility lines sparked the fire but denies committing any crime. A previous tentative court order found no evidence that any inspections in the area fell below standard. There is still a civil agreement between the district attorney and PG&E pending. In San Francisco, this bakery stabbing We have more information about this. New details about this bakery worker stabbed in Chinatown. A 61-year-old suspect released from prison 10 days before the attack on Monday was already on parole for another stabbing in 2016. Court records show he had a criminal record dating back to 1999 with 6 cases ranging from vandalism to attempted murder. As for the victim, she remains in the hospital. Her boss says she's going to pull through.
Wow. That had everything wrapped up in it. It's a violent crime from a repeat offender is what you're saying, yeah?
He stabbed somebody and was in jail before and got out of prison 10 days before the stabbing on Monday.
It's the thing that people find, I would suggest, among the most galling facts about the system and about the lawlessness that has affected the Bay Area. And by the way, it's not just the Bay Area, but
I'm going to tell you about this bulldozer attack lastly. This man is behind bars after he allegedly took a stolen bulldozer on a destructive joyride through Virginia State University's campus.
What?
Police say this 27-year-old suspect stole the bulldozer from a construction site near the university's multi-purpose center over the weekend, rammed it into a VSU police car, a building on campus, parking signs, light poles, trees, and a nearby church. At one point, he pushed the Virginia State University police car across the street, flipped it on its side. The suspect eventually arrested is being held without bond. You know how it goes. But that's, if you're going to go down, I'm telling you.
Put on a show is your point before it all hits.
Really, give it some oomph. Give it a little power there. Oh. Tenuta Vineyards sponsors this newscast. They have space for off-site business meetings. What a fun place to have a meeting. They have an event room that holds 100 people. They have a small event room, a little more intimate, holds about 20 people. Both rooms can be reserved for private parties. And Tenuta also does team building events. So you can go there. They'll be a winemaker for a day type of thing. It's a competition. Everybody gets to go home with a bottle of the winning blend. This winery is child friendly. They are pet friendly. They are cyclist friendly. And they're just friendly. Their motto is, give us 30 minutes and we will be friends for life. So that is Tenuta Vineyards in Livermore, where, by the way, you also get something pretty cool, which is the Mark Thompson Show discount.
No.
Did you know? Yes, indeed. That if you call them and you talk to Rich or leave him a message, here's his phone number, 925-699-4576, and you say, smash it with your iron rod, you get 10% off.
With your iron rod.
You can say it twice.
So that's Tenuta Winery in Livermore. Our thanks to them for sponsoring this newscast. And I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
Right on, Kim. Good stuff.
They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show. The Mark Thompson Show.
So excited about this next conversation. Thank you for being here. We're here Monday through Friday, 10 to noon live. You can take us in anywhere. When I say here, I'm talking about YouTube, but we're also across all major podcast platforms and enjoyed that way. Thank you for all of you. I get a lot of email from people who listen on sort of podcasts exclusively. That's great, too. We're completely crowdfunded and appreciate all of you who support us on an ongoing basis through Patreon and PayPal. I'm Mark. Kim is here, and welcome into the mix. An international expert in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Author of Machine Learning with TensorFlow, the second edition. This guy's created all sorts of technologies. Best known for a 20-year career inventing the most downloaded software on the planet, creating technology that powers all the data systems in the industry. So honored and excited to talk to him about the crossroads at which we find ourselves when it comes to artificial intelligence and machine learning. How about it for Chris Mattman, please? Yeah. What's up, Chris?
Hey, Mark. How's it going? Can you hear me all right?
I hear you great. You sound good. Is that right, Albert? You can hear Chris okay? You're happy with his level? You'll ride it and make it all smooth, Albert?
Yeah, I'm on it. Yeah, he sounds
okay,
great
good.
Now.
Okay, cool. Chris, wow. I mean, you're the man for the moment. I mean, it's pretty scary when you see all of the people, some of whom were, pioneers in this field of artificial intelligence, sign on to warnings saying this machine learning and the ability of artificial intelligence to essentially learn on its own without being shown, you can correct me on some, this is my layman's understanding of it, could really lead us off the cliff. I mean, it could lead to an extinction event, that the machines that are supposed to help us turn on us like some kind of bad sci-fi scenario.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, so this is the second letter, that was signed. It has a little bit of a different, impact. The first one was originally, coming out. It basically was signed on by Elon Musk and a number of other kind of luminaries in the field. And they basically said there should be a 6-month pause on the development of AI, as it relates to training models, pushing out technologies, things like that. This latest letter is not asking for a pause, but it's basically demanding that, governments step in and that we treat AI the same way that we treat, climate disaster or pandemics and things like that. And there's a lot of the same signatories, to it. The heads of OpenAI, like Sam Altman, the heads of Google's DeepMind, technology and things like that. And they're raising the alarm, Mark, kind of like you said, but in a different way. I kind of objected a little to the first letter that basically said the U.S. at a minimum, should stop developing the technology. My worry was related to our foreign adversaries who weren't going to stop. It's not like China is going to, stop developing the technology. And I think we'd be at a big detriment, from a national security perspective if we did that. However, I definitely agree with a number of the concerns in a number of the different areas, which I'm sure we'll get into.
Well, you make such a good point, and honestly, it's such an obvious point, and yet it didn't occur to me, which is you can stop your AI development, but the rest of the world continues, China, et cetera. I mean, these are technologically gifted superpowers, meaning they have plenty of money and plenty of intellectual horsepower to pursue it. So the nuclear war, the inclusion of nuclear war in that series of things that you just mentioned, you kind of were summarizing the letter, and you mentioned pandemic, and you mentioned climate crisis, and they included nuclear war in that too. And the reason first of all, it's shocking and scary and all that stuff, but the reason I particularly was interested in that is the countries of the world have historically tried to, those with nuclear capabilities, I'm talking about Russia, China, America, et cetera, to reach some kind of tense but agreed upon place where the technology exists to destroy us all in a mutually assured destruction, but that we've been able to come to treaties and agreements. Might something like that be possible when it comes to artificial intelligence?
Yeah, Mark, I think so. I think that we're going to get AI proliferation. And if you talk about sort of the West versus the rest of, and I'll include EU in that as well, the EU is actually going to be the leader in this. The EU put out an AI, I think it's called the AI Act. And in it, actually, they just made an announcement about it today. They're talking about sort of a risk-based approach to AI. And they're talking about ethics. And they're talking about when you should use things like facial recognition, how you should eliminate bias from the way that we train our models. In other words, there are problems with some of the early computer vision smart cars was that they had never been trained on data of someone, say, in a wheelchair. So they didn't understand what to do when they saw that, so we want the training data to be, not necessarily free, but as free as possible from bias, as possible. We want, when they make a prediction, to say what the level of confidence in that prediction is, not just whether it's going to rain tomorrow or not, but what's the confidence in it? Because you might not understand that the best choice might be that it's going to rain tomorrow, but the confidence was only 15%, and everything beyond that is like 7%. Sure, it's the best choice, but it was only 15% confidence. So we need to report the confidence when these models make predictions, as well. So the EU, because of their various data privacy laws and some of getting ahead of some of the things that go into technology and data, which are the things that feed AI and machine learning, they're going to get ahead. But the US actually realizes that they need to kind of be part and parcel to this almost AI proliferation as well. So the US is basically saying there's a AI national strategy by the administration, and they need to update the strategic plan. And in it, it's going to have language that sounds, I would expect, very similar to this AI Act. But just contrasting it, to your point from earlier, Mark, about other countries, that we brought up, Russia, China, and things like that. There was a national security report that came out that Eric Schmidt, used to be the CEO of Google, worked with the national security apparatus in the US. And they basically said, and they published this report, Fareed Zakaria talked about it on his show in 2021. This report basically said the US is behind our adversaries in 100+ areas in AI. And that's why, we need to take proliferation into the account. But I just urge, we need to not take a pause or stop or whatever, because those 100 areas, we're not going to get any closer, to where our adversaries are at unless we continue to develop them.
Well, why are we so far behind?
Yeah, so a lot of the reason kind of related to that is some of our, foreign adversaries don't take the same ethical approach that we do. For instance, China has no problem with using biometric data. They use it everywhere, and, they've had apps like Elon wants to build here with Twitter, where, these sort of universal apps that include biometrics, that include surveillance, computer vision, facial identification. So all of the things that slow us down and that are good ethically, some of our adversaries don't use. So they have more training data, more understanding of what to do, when predictions happen, more understanding on how the population reacts. And so that in and of itself, suggests to us, since AI is so data hungry, it's so dependent, on the way that it makes its predictions. It's so dependent too on the impacts of it. Like just imagine, the upskilling. Not a lot of people talk about the upskilling, but it's like, okay, AI is here tomorrow. We have the Ford. All of a sudden, our horses and buggies gone? I don't think the answer is yes to that. And actually, if you look at the history, horses and buggies remained for a number of years, almost a decade, beyond when we had cars. And the reason for that is we need to provide landing spots, and almost soft landings for the skills that are required, and I hate it when people say, learn to code, or, all of the truckers, where their jobs are going to be replaced, in the Midwest, driving very treacherous routes in the, overnight, 18-hour shifts and stuff, where having AI do that would be really important. The answer isn't to tell them to learn to code. It's to give them another very, important and meaningful job and get that subject matter expert knowledge out. China's ahead, Russia's ahead on that. We need to catch up.
On the ability of AI to surpass human level understanding, and certainly to surpass human level performance in a lot of ways, that's a foregone conclusion, right? I mean, it's simply impossible for a doctor or medical clinician or a diagnostician of any kind, or a lawyer or a legal analyst to take in the kind of data that a universe of data that AI can take in. So you can see, just looking in, that this is an extremely powerful weapon for good, right? I mean, those could be, but those same qualities, I suppose, kind of what I was saying at the beginning of this conversation, can be used to defeat the human hosts, to put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. And not to mention the repeatability of tasks. Humans get bored doing the same thing over and over again, but the machines do not. And so, whereas that radiologist who continuously is looking at, CT scans and trying to figure out whether there's a nodule or not, studies basically show that those people that are fresh when they enter the job and they're doing it either in their daily schedule and they do it early on, they're going to be more accurate than if you put them on a 12, 16-hour shift. However, that's not true, necessarily for the AI. And it's going to do repeatable tasks more accurately and things like that. The other challenge, kind of related to this, is you mentioned too, better than human or better performance, Mark. So the thing I tell people is that there have been three sort of sensory watershed moments for AI over the last couple decades. The first was in 2012, when you've heard this guy's name in the news, Jeffrey Hinton, the Google person who resigned, the senior guy. His student Alex, developed a model called AlexNet. It's named after him, and that basically replicated the human vision, the visual cortex. He created the first really human or better eye, artificially, to see, pick out objects and images and video and to label them. And in 2012, that was human or better. And so just imagine that's the foundation of all smart cars, computer vision, and stuff like that. 2014, Baidu put out a model called deep speech. This was our auditory system, like an eardrum. What deep speech did is it listened to sounds and it translates them to text. That is exactly what happens on your Google Home, your Alexa, all of your smart devices. And apologies if I said anyone's off there. Anyways, all of that's our eardrum. 2014. Imagine what's happened since. And then finally, 2018, Google's BERT model. That is the foundation of natural language understanding. Basically, I speak to you, it speaks back like a human would. And that's what, all this GPT-4 and all that. Those senses at those times were human or better. And so things have been evolving, ever since. But I tell people, I haven't seen the AI artificial nose for olfactory yet, or even the great touch, but it's coming. So
wow, it's scary. And finally, I need to ask you the 6-month thing you point out so beautifully is a fool's errand. It doesn't make any sense even, but how do you get to some kind of uneasy, tense agreement of the sort that I was talking about that they made with nuclear technology, with nuclear weaponry? What kind of regulation is practical? And just as an aside, the government, if you heard them during the meta hearings, where they got what was his what's his name? The Facebook. Zuckerberg, thank you. They had him up there, and they didn't even know how Facebook worked, and they were sitting there trying to suggest regulatory legislation, and it's absurd. And these are people, some of whom have never sent an email. These are our legislators. They've been there for a long time, and I guess what I'm saying is, as a whole, these aren't technologists. Okay, they're not. Even the best of them probably have limited knowledge of this because there's so much to know. How do they become part of a process to craft regulation for this industry?
Yeah, so that's a hard problem, Mark. And the thing I'm going to say is I actually think the Hollywood writers' strike is going to be an interesting moment here, because what's going to happen related to that, we all know with the writers' strike, one of the big issues obviously is writers, the residuals on movie, the era of SVOD and streaming. But one of the big issues that not a ton of people are talking about is AI related to that. It's the fact that the writers, the creators, and eventually now SAG-AFTRA and the actors and everyone else is getting in on this, is their concern is, hey, now you have generative AI that can generate images, video, audio, text, right, to create content. And so I think if you look at big corporations agreements that are going to kind of drive some of the concerns about AI and maybe be out of government, but be a framework the government can look at, I would watch that space. Because I think the things they're going to talk about there are, basically citing and appropriately saying this was generated by AI. They're going to figure out the data issue. Like the big issue that we have with AI too, that governments are going to care about is all of these models are trained on people's data, and news media and, movies and everyone else has woken up and been like, oh God, they scraped our data, to train all these things. It's not just Wikipedia and public data. Like there's data that they went out there and got that, the question is IP. Like if I was a lawyer, the next 10 years would be very fun and probably profitable, because you're going to suss out what the data requirements, and you're going to talk about bias. You're going to talk about that. And then you're going to talk about how the AI is used and integrated. And that's going to deal with upskilling. What do all the writers do? So that's a space that I would look to watch. The other space is the EU. The EU has a history with data laws recently, like GDPR or whatever, of being kind of like a place that's willing to take a stronger stance in some cases, than the US, and then to get feedback. But watch the US follow. I think the EU AI Act, I think the Hollywood writers' strike, and what happens with the negotiate, those are going to be two models we're going to deeply look at. And then from there, related to, like you said, our adversaries, what's going to happen related to that is that our adversaries are also driven economically. And so I think that writer's strike deal, given, the influence of East Asia and China in the movies right now, is going to be a big deal as well. And they're going to watch the economics of that and how that drives potentially them to the table.
It's so interesting. That's a great little summary as well as strategy for watching regulation as it emerges. I think you're right. Profit motive, what's happening overseas, what deal is made with the WGA. Very good stuff, Chris. Listen, man, it's a real pleasure to have you in, and I hope, look, this is an immensely important part of an emerging technology that's going to have titanic effects on society. So we'd love for you to be a regular visitor. I hope we can get you to come by again.
I'd love to come back, and thanks for having me on, Mark. I really appreciate it. Anytime.
Chris Mattman, everybody. Thanks, Chris. Good stuff. Yeah,
The Mark Thompson Show.
I see the frustrations with how you regulate this stuff, Kim. But I thought he actually had some interesting ways to monitor how regulation might come to pass and what it might look like. So good stuff from Chris. And in the chat, I saw some interesting comments as well, which we can deal with at the end of the show as we swing back around. Yeah.
When you have people who are involved in the creation of that technology sounding the alarm, it's that much more serious.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That's why I think it really got everybody's attention for just the reason you said. Yeah. We do a lot of politics on the show. I never know how much, what the balance should be, politics versus other stuff. Coming up, we're going to talk about succession and the monitoring isn't regulating. Right. Well, when I don't know if that's a bust on what I said. I was saying that I don't know what that reference is, honestly. I hate it when I get a little piece of an idea and I go, well, let me see it. Let me square that with what was said.
Yeah.
He was saying when you look at emerging potential regulation, monitor, maybe that's what you're referring to, Harry, I don't know, monitor those things that are happening with the writer's strike, with the EU regulations, these are bellwethers for what could potentially be regulatory legislative processes here. That's what he was saying. So I don't know if that
By the way, can I mention something
please.
as you're looking? I wanted to tell you that I saw this memo that iHeartRadio put out yesterday, and it asked all of their staff members to refrain from anything using Chat GPT on their systems. They don't want Chat GPT to get a hold of any of their information and use it to further its own discussion or possibly help their competitors or anything else. So iHeartRadio says we're going to get our own AI systems in place to help you write or search or whatever. Don't use any other systems.
Wow.
Because they learn what you're doing. And I thought that was interesting. Yeah.
That is very interesting.
Everything is going extremely well.
I think that really is interesting. And it's interesting to have them say, we're coming up with our own AI, or we're going to institute our own proprietary AI. And so you'll have to use that.
Right.
You can't use Chat GPT.
I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that.
Right.
Our own proprietary AI that won't share all of our knowledge base with the public AI, right?
That's right. Yeah. That's right.
I think you know what the problem is just as well as I do.
So I wonder if that won't be the next iteration, that big companies like iHeart will have their own version of an AI technology that's put in place, a little like, we run Windows-based business software or whatever it might be, You have some licensing agreement with an AI technology of one sort or another, and that licensing agreement is exclusively with your company. That would be an interesting way to go. That's a really interesting point, and I hadn't heard about that. I was over at iHeart yesterday. Google has put 1.4 million square feet of office space in Silicon Valley on the sublease market. That means they don't think they're going to need it.
Everybody, even Google?
Yeah.
Wow.
I know. That's why I mentioned Google's like, top of the pyramid. Reducing Bay Area real estate holdings is part of the tech company's efforts to reassess its global real estate footprint. The listings include 190,000 square feet in Mountain View, 151,000 square feet at another place in Mountain View, a 26,615 feet in Sunnyvale, and then at another Mountain View location, a couple of 100,000 square feet, and then close to 750,000 square feet of office space at the Moffett Park campus in Sunnyvale.
There's never been anything like this.
Yeah, I mean, they were excited, and now they're not
fake.
as excited.
That's real.
Yeah. They're moving, they say, toward plans for major development in San Jose, even though they're downsizing in other parts of the Bay Area. I think that downsizing, though, is a hint that they may not be moving toward major development in San Jose in as major development a way as they might have been before. But we shall see. Smash the like button like a boss.
Smashed it with your iron rod.
If you're just passing through on YouTube or wherever, hit us with a thumbs up. I'll tell you what is coming up next. A conversation and a back and forth about the finale of Succession. I loved it. I thought it was a great finish. And I bumped into, as I mentioned to you at the beginning of the show, Mo Kelly from KFI Radio. And he didn't like it. And we talked about it a little bit on the air, but couldn't really talk about it because we didn't want any spoiler, So here, we'll get into it a little bit with specifics. I will warn you before we start. If you are still behind and you haven't seen it, I'll give you fair warning so that you can, go do something else for a few minutes. But a healthy conversation between myself, Mo Kelly, and Ben Mankiewicz from Turner Classic Movies. He's going to join us. He was another big Succession.
What?
Yes, it's a rugby scrum of conversation. Did you see it, Kim, or not? Succession.
I've been trying to catch up. I'm on season 2, episode 5. So
now you may have to.
Well, it doesn't. Spoilers don't bother me because I'm going to watch it anyway. I don't mind knowing. So to me, it's no big deal.
There's a foreshadowing. There is when you know it, you see the clues to it in a way that you wouldn't before. So anyway, all of that is still to come. So smash the like button. Hang out for the Succession finale conversation. Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
On the Mark Thompson Show, I'm Kim McAllister. Let's talk about debt, baby, one more time. House Speaker Kevin McCarthy believes the debt limit bill will have enough votes to pass the House. Many conservative Republicans are against it, saying it doesn't go far enough to rein in government spending, but the House is expected to vote on the bill this evening. There are 5 people that remain unaccounted for in an Iowa building that was scheduled to be torn down. The Davenport, Iowa mayor, Mike Mattman, said 2 of the 5 unaccounted for people are believed to be in that building, but the planned demolition has now been postponed. You'd think they'd want to get everybody, even the remains, out before they tear it down. There have been protests and all kinds of things over this. This building burned by fire, and now it looks like it's scheduled to be torn down, but they're going to go back in, see if they can find anyone else. Congress is getting involved in concert tours. 2 New Jersey congressmen sponsoring a bill called the Boss and Swift Act in an effort to bring transparency and regulation to an industry they say is badly corrupted. The bill is named for Bruce Springsteen, of course, and Taylor Swift. Utah Republican Congressman Chris Stewart is stepping down. He made the announcement yesterday, citing his wife's health issues. His seat will remain vacant until a special election can be held to fill the seat. There's a filing from the Justice Department saying West Virginia Governor Jim Justice owes more than $7 million in unpaid fines and interest. The fines are related to 130 alleged mining violations involving the 13 coal companies he owns. Justice, who is in his second term as governor, recently announced he's running for the U.S. Senate. So wait a minute. Can you do that when you owe $7 million in fines?
Apparently you can do it.
Can you? Yeah.
What better way to make it back so you can pay it off than political fundraising?
A San Diego attorney once named Woman of the Year Rising Star is being sought by U.S. Marshals. Oh no, Kelly Duford Williams given the honor by San Diego Magazine in 2021. How times have changed, because now she's a fugitive with a warrant out for her arrest on grand theft charges. Her law license has been revoked. She's accused of misappropriating funds in connection with several $100,000 of her clients received in settlements, but they never got that money. Why? Apparently somebody got that money. It wasn't the clients. There are some new details released about a shooting at the Santa Cruz area, Cowell Beach. Police say 2 men were drunk and firing at empty wine bottles Monday night. One was reportedly carrying a ghost gun. Officers found several bullet casings and a broken bottle in the area. Video shows them evacuating everyone from the beach as they move to arrest those men. And lastly, 3-pointers equal free burritos during this year's NBA Finals. Chipotle announcing it'll give away 300 free burritos each time a Denver Nuggets or Miami Heat player makes a 3-pointer during the series. The series gets underway Thursday. Chipotle will tweet a message from its Twitter account after each 3-pointer, and the first 300 to text that message to its number will receive a promo code for the Mexican Grill. 3-pointers, free burritos. What could go wrong? I'm Kim McAllister on The Mark Thompson Show.
The Mark Thompson Show. They had to close down an entire radio station to silence him. And now, he's here. Ladies and gentlemen, Mark Thompson. The Mark Thompson Show.
Joe Fish, Sal the Shoemaker, Joe Box, and Little Anthony.
Their envy wonton killing. I don't know what a wonton killing is. I'm going to have to look that one up.
And I wanted to apologize to the Asian community, the Asian American community.
Yes. Apologies to all. It is our final half hour. Great to have you with us, and get right into it. Succession, the finale, aired on Sunday night. And it was delicious, I thought. It was great. But there is disagreement as to how delicious, or if indeed it is delicious. One person who feels passionately about the fact that maybe it missed is the talk show host out of Southern California. The big blowtorch of Southern California is KFI Radio. And he joins us now. His show is called Later with Mo Kelly from 7 to 10 every night on KFI. Mo Kelly, everybody. Hi,
it
Mo
is
Kelly.
A pleasure. Oh, it's great to see you. First time meeting you, Kim. Thank you for having me on. Mark, I want that tote bag in the background. And yes. And someone just say free burrito. Can I get a free burrito? I'm not asking for much.
Yeah. Mo's already after the merch and the food. I love it. I love somebody with a plan, you know. And this guy from Turner Classic Movies and the CBS Sunday Morning. How about it for Ben Mankiewicz? Yeah. Ben, maybe we can interest you in a tote bag as well, you know. It's like getmarkmerch.com. You'll have to buy it like everybody else. I don't have a freebie for first appearance.
I have more tote bags than anyone else in America. I just do. It's a fact. Yeah.
Well, Mo, maybe you would like one of Ben's tote bags as well.
Oh man, if I could find somebody to take some tote bags, that would be the best. Yeah. How many do you want? 40? Yeah.
Look, free is all I want. Free is what I need.
Again, I love a guy with a plan. Well, I loved the finale to Succession. The final season that now, okay, now my friends, there will be spoilers. So if you haven't seen it and you want to see it, now would be a time to, turn us down. The final season brought a couple of key moments. First of all, you saw Logan Roy die. I mean, that was something that really was very well protected in terms of the word getting out. And it was a huge inflection moment in the season, and it started the scattering for, who would be the successor or what combination of kids would make up the successors. Give me your sense of the season, Mo, and then why you were disappointed by the finale.
I think that the season did suffer from the absence, the recognizable and palpable absence of actor Brian Cox. Yes, there were some cameos, if you will, some retconning of his presence from previous videos, but Brian Cox is such a masterful actor. His presence loomed large, not only over the series, but also hanging over the heads of the characters. And I think I missed him in that. Yes, it's called Succession. We knew that we were going to get there, but the season for me was a bit uneven, and I felt like they were running out of story to tell in some of those mid-season episodes.
Ben?
First of all, what I say here, I just don't want this to affect any tote bag arrangement that I have with Mo. I see this as an opportunity to offload many tote bags at no charge. I think Mo couldn't be more wrong. I think this is the best show in the history of television. As you know, Mark, I spent a great deal of time ordering the shows, ranking them. And I believe this, well, let me put it this way, because I don't like hyperbole. It is in the top tier, and it is the first show that I felt might be better than The Sopranos. And I just thought it ended spectacularly well. I'll concede that to what Brian Cox said, and to what Mo said, and that Brian Cox actually supports. Maybe they killed him a little early. Maybe that's an episode 5 death and not an episode 3 death. But I mean, again, we're talking about this brilliant piece of art. And it feels a little to me like I liked Catcher in the Rye, but I thought chapter 18 was weak. I think we're missing the point when we get into something this great, and we can talk about it and celebrate it. But I don't like nitpicking the creative decisions that these people made. But of course, was Brian Cox missed? Yeah, definitely. Of course he was. But I think that enables us as viewers to feel what it must have felt like at Waystar for everybody who worked there, for everybody in that inner circle, and of course for the kids too.
The scramble, Mo, it was pretty great to watch the scramble, wasn't it? I mean, once Logan was gone, you began to see everybody take on the quiet politics and the heavy-handed politics of their future.
Yeah, and I don't think maybe my comments were misconstrued. I don't think there's this age-old debate. If the ending, if a show doesn't stick the landing, or if a movie doesn't stick the landing, does that ruin the TV show or movie? I would say no. I mean, I'm in agreement that Succession is probably one of the greatest television shows of all time. It just left a bad taste in my mouth at the end. And we're quibbling about degrees of perfection here, not whether it was a bad show. And for me, I needed some ends to be tied up. And I think there's a common thread. How Meg had mentioned The Sopranos. I didn't care for The Sopranos ending either. And maybe it comes from expectations of what we want out of a series finale as opposed to a season finale. A series finale, for me, I wanted to at least tie up some ends. So when I walk away from that last episode, I at least have some sort of certitude that I know what's going to happen in the next 6 months of a character's life or so. We didn't get that with The Sopranos. We didn't get that with Westworld. We didn't get that with Succession. I felt that at the end of this episode, well, it was just business as usual. It was chaos as usual. It was Game of Thrones, to throw in another HBO show, as usual. And they're just going to be fighting over the throne. Tom sits on the throne right now, but he may not be by tomorrow because we know Lucas backstabs everybody.
Well, let me just say this. I thought that we do know what the next 6 months is going to be like. The kids are all outcasts now, right? They've lost this jewel. Tom is a puppet of Lucas, and he's okay being a puppet. That was the idea. He's just looking for his little safe place in the sun. He has power, but his power is completely defined by Lucas. And Lucas is looking for a puppet because Lucas is a puppeteer. I think one of the things he even talks about, or it was made clear, is that he finds Tom attractive because of what we know about Tom, and even what Shiv said about Tom.
Yeah, Mark, what to that point, I mean, Lucas said he has enough ideas. I don't want any more ideas. I mean, he literally wants somebody, and Tom said it, who grinds, right? Who is so riddled with anxiety and what other people will think of him that he never stops trying to compensate for that fear by pleasing. So he's the ideal person to lead this company. And I think just this perfect sort of stand-in representative of what success so often means in corporate America, right? Which is just a proximity to celebrity, a proximity to power. That's all Tom wanted. That's all he needed. I thought that was such an interesting character from the start and a believable arc for him to end where he ended up. And I think the more I sit with it, a believable decision by Shiv to not, I mean, essentially she had a choice, right? Her brother or Tom. And she, of course, she chose her husband. And that thing Tom said earlier in the episode on the phone, when she was getting on the plane, I can't remember it exactly, and I haven't rewatched it yet. I will. But she said to him, he said to her, essentially, boy, you can't stand to lose, meaning them, to be a failure at something. And it's almost like she was deciding, no, I'm not a failure at my marriage. I'm not. I am. Look, we're married and we're happy and we're going to have a baby. When obviously none of that is true, except they will hopefully have a healthy child.
Go ahead, Ben. Go ahead.
This is where I think it comes down to perception, because I don't know that Shiv is any better proximity or close proximity to power, because Lucas knows that he backstabs Shiv and Shiv is going to come for him. We know that Tom has a nasty taste in his mouth about Shiv. Tom doesn't know that baby is his. I don't know if Shiv knows if that baby is his. We don't know. And when she put her hand on top of Tom's, I don't know if that was like a warm invitation that they were going to reconcile. Tom even said something to the effect of, I don't know if we've said too much or we've done too much to hurt each other. I don't know that these intentions are going to last any length of time. Lucas has messed over his own staff. He's messed over everyone in the Roy family. So I don't know that he would trust Shiv beyond the fact that he wants to sleep with her.
Right, which, by the way, was a wild little piece of dialogue where he gives that up. That was not a warm moment in the car. There was no warmth there. It was a cold agreement, it seemed. Right.
No, and Tom putting his hand out upside down, like take my hand. It was a 21st century kiss the ring.
Kiss the brass ring. Yeah.
Yeah, and she doesn't, and they don't clench. I mean, that's not an accident that we didn't see them grip their hands together. So no, I think we know exactly what that relationship is going to be like. It has no chance of success. It's a giant failure. And I think Shiv is far worse off. She's not even remotely close to power. And she couldn't stand the thought that her power is through this, this stand-in for greatness, right? I mean, right. Tom is Tom is literally George Clooney's stand-in. Right. I mean, that's all he is in life is, hey, Tom, would you stand there under the light? We got to make sure the shine's right. You're about Clooney's height, man. That'll be good. Like he's not real. None of what he has is real. He'll get the money and he'll have a nice car and people will pick him up every day. But he doesn't have real power. And Shiv was at least close to it before and was sort of making her own way. Now, to me, I don't know where she goes. I'm interested in it. I have no problem not knowing the answer. I imagine she's the one most likely to rebuild and have some modicum of a successful career, whereas it's going to be much harder for Kendall, and I suspect completely impossible for Roman.
See, that's where I think the episode fell apart for me with great respect, because Shiv made that calculation in the boardroom. She knows that if she does not give her vote, even though she despised the idea of Kindle as king, she knew that it would be handing over the company and also that power dynamic to someone that she probably despised, because she knew Tom was the pick before they sat down in the boardroom.
They talked, no question.
Right.
There was a Tom Schiff conversation we didn't see, right? Of course.
So that's what bothered me. It's like, okay, so you at least you have a brother for life, but you don't have this husband or marriage for life. You know where that is going, and it seemed like you're actually further away from power than if Kendall were the king.
Well, let me jump. That's why. So I think you're definitely right. I think she's definitely further away from power than if Kendall were there. The reason that I believe that she made that decision was because of Logan, and not because of anything that he wanted, because he has poisoned these children. I mean, ultimately, what we saw there was the effects of being raised for whatever it is, between 35 and 43 years between the three of them, of this hideous, poisonous man, that she actually sabotaged herself, because what she was not going to let happen was she was not going to let her brother win. She couldn't stomach it. And there's, of course, even though it was an awful, heated, terrible fight to witness, glorious from a dramatic point of view, yeah, everything they said was totally reasonable. You know, you killed a kid, and then, oh, wait, you lied about killing. I mean, either way, probably not fit to run a major company. But I see it as that they just can't stand together. They're incapable of it, that their father was so awful and their mother didn't help, that they are so badly damaged that she made this decision, which doesn't suit her, which, of course, is the history of all of them, a series of decisions which doesn't suit them.
Yeah, it is interesting, Mo, that they really do have in their DNA, I mean, maybe almost literally in the family upbringing of these kids, this sort of the aggression and the double cross and the pact that they'll make with the devil, all of these things exist in them as a result of their upbringing, wouldn't you say? I mean, that is what I thought was the magic, and why we wanted to like certain characters from time to time, I think, as an audience, and just never really could, because none of them had, it seemed, redeeming qualities.
It was Shakespearean, I would say. The fact that Logan basically said, no, he did say, and he was right, that they are unserious people. He raised them and pitted them against one another every step of the way. One day, Kendall thought he was going to be the successor. Then Shiv thought that she was going to be the successor. Then he became close to Rome near the end, and Rome thought he was actually going to be the successor, when none of them ever were. And he, I think, raised them to not be the successor, to almost like, okay, I'm going to teach you a little bit about running the kingdom, but not everything that you need to run the kingdom to maintain his power through his death. Now, the sad part about it is, I don't think Logan Roy ever wanted that company to be outside the family's control on some level. Maybe he envisioned all three of them ruling as a triumvirate in some twisted, sordid way, but we'll never know.
I think he pitted them against each other because, I don't know, he thought it was fun, because he never trusted anybody his entire life, and he didn't get along with his brother, and he didn't know he didn't know the benefits of sticking with people. He's the most loathsome character on a show full of loathsome characters, because I'm not sure he ever showed any real humanity. I think this is what it is to have Logan as your parent. I think I just want to say one thing real quick, that first of all, I think that they were all done a favor, right? I mean, I know that Jesse Armstrong said that, this is going to be the defining moment in Kendall's life. He can make it an interesting and a successful moment, right? If he's capable of it, right? Because first of all, he'd never succeed. I mean, cable is falling apart. Gojo's not going to work. It's a day. I mean, that business model is in trouble. And yes, he might have saved it, but he also would always be seen as the kid who got the job because it was his dad's, right? Now he can go off and do something, and he's got, $500 million to do it. Like, he's going to be fine, right? We don't need to worry about these guys. They were all freed. So that's one hand. I don't know whether they'll ever take advantage of it, but they're all free now of the awfulness of a guy who, in Jeremy Strong's word, in Kendall's words, he made me hate him and then he died, right? That's sort of how he raised him. And then lastly, I think there was too much focus in general on who gets the throne, to go back to Mo's wise Game of Thrones reference. I mean, that's interesting, and that's the thing they had to resolve, and that's the thing they did resolve. The story was not which kid is going to lead it. I never thought there was any chance of any kid leading it except Kendall. This story set up from the beginning was, will Kendall get it? Will Kendall lead this company? That was it. There were all these other little side things going on, and those and Shiv and Roman had a key role, but the whole issue was about Kendall. It was really about the eldest boy and his dad, right? It was that story, and I think they finished it beautifully and tragically and awfully, and I'm so disappointed that we won't see it anymore, but so pleased that it's just sort of, to me, this perfect 40 hours of heightened drama.
He wasn't the eldest boy, and I think Connor probably is the only one who ended up happy. Is the irony of it all. You know,
that I'm glad you mentioned Connor, because I was just going to say here in our last couple of minutes, the one odd character that I felt at times I really enjoyed his plot line and the arc associated with Connor. At some time during when I'd watch, I'd find it annoying. I'd find it like I'm way into the other three. I know that's blasphemous to say, but
no, I think it's because that's how Logan felt about him. He was not. I mean, of course, Kendall considers himself the eldest boy because those are the only three kids that mattered, right? Yeah. I mean, Connor was in a different. Yeah, he's technically the eldest, but nobody. So I always thought, like, could I hang out with who would I like to spend time with in the Roy family of the kids? And Roman would obviously be fun, right? He would say something awful, probably racist, definitely sexist, and you'd have to end the night, right? Shiv, yeah, I could spend some time with Shiv. I think we all understand that. And she's super smart and interesting also, right? And Kendall would be interesting. I couldn't, for obvious reasons. He's a super, like Jeremy Strong, this intense but interesting guy. I couldn't spend 10 seconds with Connor Roy. I mean, I hated that guy, loathed him more than any other character, even though, because he wasn't really harmless, because like Elon Musk, he could have done something good with his power, and he just chose not to.
There was a blissful ignorance to Connor. He wasn't self-aware. He wasn't all that worldly. He wasn't all that intelligent in an intellectual sense. And I think that shielded him from his biggest issue was that daddy didn't choose him. Daddy didn't love him. Daddy didn't embrace him or his mother. Not to diminish it, but I think that was his greatest failing, if you will, or regret.
Yeah,
that's not a lot.
Yeah, I don't think it was blissful ignorance. I think it was blissless ignorance, which, by the way, is a phrase that we all ought to start using. Yeah.
Yes, but guys, I love kicking it around. I got wrapped up in it in such a big way. I'm going to rewatch. I'll tell you, it's interesting, Mo. You mentioned Westworld. I never saw that, so I guess. At some point, maybe I'll jump on the West. How many seasons was that? 3, I think? Or?
4. Okay. I love HBO shows. I despise HBO series finales. It seems like they can't ever stick the landing.
Well, it is in everybody's defense, it is so hard, right? It is so hard to end a great piece of art. Everybody who's written, and I haven't, but everybody who's written a novel, everybody who's written a show, it's hard to end. And after this, after this long, particularly hard to end. The longer it gets, I suspect, the harder it is to end it. I think they did a great job, but I like The Sopranos ending. I like Lost ending, but it is hard. It's super hard.
The one thing that was interesting to me about the ending here in our last minute is that now reading about it, it was predetermined how it would end, and that's why a lot of these things, as you go back and watch it again, make so much sense. That distinguishes it from other hit series. I'm thinking of, for example, Breaking Bad. The stuff I was reading about Breaking Bad suggesting, and this is also a super hot series, and it was widely viewed as like a breakout kind of thing. They didn't know how they were going to end that. They had so many loose ends. They got everybody in a hotel room daily for like 12 days. And they try to work out how to tie all these things together. So the writing process, what you're talking about, Ben, how they do it, and it just and coming up with a clean landing can be difficult, challenging, and in this case, maybe it was aided by the fact that was, and again, this is me speaking, Mo. I know you felt like it might have missed, but by the fact that it was predetermined. They had a sense, a strategy all along as to how it was going to happen.
I didn't read that it was all along. I read that it became clear for a while that Tom was going to get this job in some way. But I don't think it was from the beginning. I think it became clear to them. I didn't get a time frame. I certainly sensed like by the end of season 3, they were like, I think we know how this is going to come together. That's how I read it, but maybe I'm mistaken.
The name, his name is the same name as a guy in baseball history.
Bill Wambsgans, who turned the unassisted triple play in the 1920 World Series for the Indians. Of Major League Baseball's, I think 13 or 14, I might have that wrong, but it's under 20 unassisted triple plays. He's the only outfielder to turn one. The rest have all been turned.
Well, can you read anything into that? Can you read anything into his name? Would that suggest that he would be the winner as they conceived it?
Right, because he took out 3 people at once by himself. That was that great theory. It was on the internet recently, but it turns out it's been a theory for a while. Like as soon as his name came up, people pointed that out. People associated with the show were like, no. No, that's not. Come on. Yeah.
Oh, so much for that then.
Yeah,
okay,
also, they're all
great.
English. There's no way they know who turned.
Oh, that's true. I forgot.
I don't
know. Mo, love you on the radio. Love you here. Come visit again. You can catch Mo Kelly at later with Mo Kelly on KFI Radio. Yeah, good stuff, buddy. And
appreciate you,
Ben. You CBS Sunday mornings and also on TCM. Continue great work. Thanks. Please visit again as well.
Thanks, Mark. Thanks, Mo. Great talking to you.
Okay.
Thank you, Matt.
Good stuff. See you guys. Yeah.
The Mark Thompson Show.
That was fun. Love that show and love those takes.
That was fun. And I'm going to watch with a greater eye for what I know is coming.
Yeah, I think you could enjoy it in a weird way. You could enjoy it more or in a different way anyway.
What you didn't tell me is what happened to Roy's wife, because in season 2, I just watched they have a kind of powwow with another media company they're buying, and she kind of gets drunk and belligerent. So I'm wondering what becomes of her and what happens to Greg.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
A lot of people were sort of positing the view that Greg might, run all the way with it. Somehow Greg was going to emerge.
Yeah.
He seemed like I didn't know what, pretzel logic could possibly lead up to that, although he does have some stuff on everybody, but I didn't see him taking over.
Do you think there are really families like that are so mean?
No, the Murdochs. No, I don't know if they're mean, but I know that there was jockeying for position, and it's a patriarchy, apparently.
Yeah.
That Rupert Murdoch favored, the boys to take over, even though likely Liz was the most capable.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, it was eerily paralleling the Murdochs, There are some good stuff if you want to knock around, you can find good stuff on the actual Murdoch family and comparing it to the Roy family. I'll give you one superficial difference between the Murdochs and the Roys. That the cussing, the using of the F word all the time that Logan does, Rupert would never do that. Rupert didn't like, obscene language in his presence. So apparently that was a big no-no. There are other differences as well, but they're also really, as I say, eerie similarities. So, Albert, what are we doing, sir? I ask you. You're the young dude who runs this thing.
Albert, thank you.
Yeah, we have a couple shout outs to do, and then we gotta wrap this thing up.
Yeah, you gotta go to sleep. Get some NyQuil going and go to sleep. Pamela Kirby, come on, Pamela Kirby with 20.
Nice. Big shout out.
Yeah, thank you for the super sticker, Pam. We're crowdfunded, so we like to recognize people who throw in. It's so very important that we keep the money coming in. John
big shout out.
Woodward, what up, John? Thank you for a 13er. Yeah,
That's
very
a cool number,
Yeah, it is. Vicky in Sausalito she said she was looking forward to the AI talk. I hope we paid off on that in a good way. I thought he was really interesting.
Thank you so much.
And Vicky, I'd like to say to this as a former Sausalito resident myself, thank you for your support of the show.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. You can find our show any time of day or night. You know, you can wake up in the middle of the night. You get a little fix of something we're talking about. You can get it across all the podcast platforms here on YouTube. And you can become a patron of the show at themarkthompsonshow.com. And there are click-throughs to Patreon and PayPal, and you can help support us and keep us on the air. But more than anything, it's great that you participate, that you check in with us, that you listen, that you watch, and that you hang out. Tomorrow, Albert, Thursday. I don't need to tell you. Thursday's a big day around here. David Katz comes through. We'll get some facts about the law and more. Belinda Weymouth with It's the Planet Stupid. That's just for starters. We have a big show tomorrow.
I'm Shadow Stevens for The Mark Thompson Show. Bye-bye.
Until tomorrow. Thank you, Kim. Thank you, Albert. Feel better, Albert. Bye-bye.